Welcome to this week's AlphaMind Podcast. Today we are embarking on a slightly different journey as we delve into the realm of systems thinking in trading. Systems thinking is a fundamental concept essential for understanding the interconnectedness and complexity which exists across various diverse domains. This theme, often overlooked in the context of trading and markets, promises to offer some valuable insights and perspectives. In today's episode, Mark Randall and myself, Stephen Goldstein, decided to have a dialogical discussion between us on this topic to try and give some context in terms of trading and markets and to put some flesh on the bones of this crucial field. Now, we may not claim to be experts in the field of systems thinking, but our coaching experience with traders and businesses has led us down the path of learning a lot more about systems thinking. And we firmly believe that a systems thinking approach can profoundly enhance your understanding of markets, as well as your personal functionality and decision-making processes when engaged in markets. Now, it's important to differentiate that we are not discussing trading systems here, which are the sets of rules for trading that people apply and create. Instead, we are focusing on systems thinking, which explores that interconnectedness within the various ecosystems within your world, some of them being that you're a part of them, and some of them are ones that you're observing. This approach, we believe, fosters holistic thinking and helps you understand and perceive these crucial, intricate relationships in markets, in these dynamic environments, especially in this really complex landscape which we are trying to navigate. Now, one of the most influential books in the field of systems thinking, and that has been an eye-opener for myself and Mark, is one written a number of years ago called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. Senge is an academic who has significantly influenced management thinking through institutions such as MIT, Harvard Business School and Stanford Graduate School of Business. The Fifth Discipline is Peter's seminal work, and it advocates for a system thinking principles when building learning organisations and helping people develop their own learning culture. Now, in the Fifth Discipline, right at the very beginning of the book is something which really caught our attention. Senge introduces an exercise that he and his colleagues use at MIT to shed light on the concept of systems thinking when they're working with people, when they're working with students. The exercise is called the beer game. It's a simulation designed to illuminate the complexities of supply chain management and to illustrate systemic thinking or system thinking. In this exercise, participants take on different roles within a simulated beer supply chain, facing challenges like delays, shortages, and miscommunications. The game reveals how seemingly minor decisions at one end of a chain can have a cascading effect on the entire system further down, leading to what they call a bullwhip effect, where small fluctuations in demand magnify as they move upstream. Now, whilst the game does not include a focus on product price, it's easy to see how the delays, shortages and miscommunications would impact the price of commodities in an open market type situation, which lead to a spiralling chain of orders, taking the price both to much higher levels and then leading to a sharp drop as a liquidity glut follows, until the backdrop in supply is eventually cleared and a price balance returns. In the beer game, participants learn really invaluable lessons about the interconnectedness nature of systems, the importance of collaboration and communication and long-term thinking in addressing systemic issues. And it's really aimed at the people who are part of those production and distribution systems in organisation. We're looking at it though from possibly the unique angle of people who are actually involved in trying to interpret price, buy and sell demand out there in the markets, which is what most traders are doing. Although some, of course, will be, particularly in the commodity world and the energy world, involved in the system itself, in the upstream part of the pricing, distribution, and marketing. This game highlights the potential pitfalls of a narrow-focused decision-making approach, where you're just looking at very simple supply impacts and cause and effect from those. And it really emphasises the necessity of embracing a holistic approach in problem solving. And that really works for all people, not just people involved in the supply chain itself, but anyone involved in a decision-making activity, which of course trading is, as is of course the management of risks when running trades. Ultimately, the beer game underscores the critical need to adopt systems thinking principles and to also foster adaptability and efficiency when navigating complex environments. So it does come down to you as well and what you're doing. And you can help that by understanding the interconnectedness of the systems that you're in. Your own system interconnects and engages with the market system, and the impact on your overall decision making, as well as understanding yourself, because you are part of the navigation process. We trust that you will find this podcast engaging and insightful and offering a departure from our typical content delivery. So we do hope you enjoy it. The AlphaMind Podcast partners with the esteemed Society of Technical Analysts. We're thrilled to endorse the STA's outstanding home study course. As a special offer for AlphaMind Podcast listeners, you can enjoy a £100 discount on this exceptional program, crafted by world-renowned technical analysis experts. Visit our website at alpha-mind.net to learn more and take advantage of this exclusive opportunity. Now, on with this week's podcast. So, Mark, we're talking about systems thinking in trading. It's a very broad, expansive term. For our audience, could you summarise what comes to you when we talk about systems thinking in trading?
Well, let's get started with you and your role in the world of trading and how you sit within a system. But start to look at it as perhaps more of an ecosystem, a trading ecosystem. So, and within that system, it's sort of what's supporting you, what's fueling you, where you're getting your ideas, where you're getting your information from, what's informing you in terms of education within that system. What do you trust? What don't you trust? What perhaps you've always wanted to be in that system, but perhaps it's been a bit out of reach as well. And that might reflect some degree of frustration. So understanding what that system looks like is pretty fundamental as to how you're going to perform within the system, which of course in this case is about trading. But actually stepping back and actually thinking about that, as we've done in a lot of our coaching, a lot of our workshops, and asking that question about, hey, what is it that's needed for me to be successful in terms of those components that are required to drive the engine of me facing the markets. And that's where I think systems thinking in terms of trading is powerful and important. So it's actually a point of reflection to start with. So you ask the question, yes, what do I need? What don't I have to give me the best chance of taking some money out of this absolute nutter of a market that I face every day. So that's what I think it's about. It's about, your relationship to all that goes on around you that's important to drive you into that sense of performing. It's not about having a system to trade.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're part of a system, call it the market. We ourselves are a system, and we exist within systems. We exist within our social system. Maybe if you work for a company, a trading company, you're part of an organizational system. If you work at a prop firm, you're part of a system is, I think, an interconnected group of people. That's what we're talking about, and they all have their own dynamics. And then, of course, you've got the great big market system, which is part of a wider environment. And you've got all these different forces which affect the market. The market price is just the collective point where everyone in that system agrees to exchange something at that moment in time.
Yeah, and you've got to have the system that needs to speak to you as well. So it needs to be open to an engagement with you. through all those various elements. So if you've got broker involvement, you need to have some sort of dynamic relationship with or your source of where you're getting these ideas from. So the analysis, where analysis comes from, where risk is getting managed, and what's your relationship with that quantum within the system. But I don't think people ask the question enough about to score your system, to look at your system and say what are the critical elements in it, within the framework of me doing my trade. Go a bit broader, the framework of me in markets in general, and go a bit beyond that. You start to dip into your own external drivers for what you do, and actually going through it and identifying the critical elements and scorecarding them. So that one's important, but it's only a 2 out of 10. Yes, what part that part of the system is clearly lacking? What do I need to learn more about certain things to get that up to 50-60%? So I think you're constantly looking like a graphic equalizer. That you get like when you're playing back audio, you'll get various peaks and troughs, and understanding where perhaps you're a bit low in terms of your effectiveness in certain parts of your system. It's where some of the coaching comes from, where you start to focus on how do we elevate that? Because if you're to operate a system level of thinking, all of those things need to be optimal for you to be performing. And it may be the fact that you've not thought about and been perhaps honest about where am I weak? I keep on thinking I'm not that weak, but actually I'm weak in this part. How do I get that? How do I make that better? And what's the process about doing that? So it's being bothered about tuning your system. So you've got to be aware of it to start with. You've got to understand with some degree of honesty about the good, the bad, and the ugly of that system. And then you've got to look at, what bits do I think I've got some control over that I can improve the effectiveness as they contribute towards my performance. But it has to start off with understanding what it looks like.
It's really interesting because we both are steeped in systems thinking. We both read about it, studied it, learned about it, and we apply it in our work. We've noticed it and observed it in our clients, both individual clients, group clients, team clients. Certainly at a business level, the businesses that are functioning better are thinking much more about themselves as a system. They're also thinking about the market they engage with as a system. And they're thinking about where their system and the market system comes together. So it is quite fascinating how we've observed this. And I think me and you together as AlphaMind on our journey have sort of been taken in this way by seeing this happen. It's been quite interesting. And I notice how many clients have been liberated by starting to look and adopt this systems thinking approach.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're in corporate cultures, you've been measured generally independently, by a line manager, and HR see you as, okay, you're perhaps they don't see you necessarily you're just part of the broader system as a number, rather than really recognizing that you were part of the market system, you're part of the desk system. That's more local, but even locally, you may sense you're still kind of isolated. And we do come across, whilst people are part of a team, they kind of operate with the shutters on and tend to be very, very siloed. And we are seeing this through our corporate engagement work that big businesses are starting to open up to a different way of thinking about how collaboration, communication, the system working together for the good of all, what the system purpose is, understanding that, and the interrelationship and understanding across the system of what others within the system do is also something that's coming out of some of our work. The need to know that you're in a system, and that's all critical for me, particularly if you're in sort of a trading structure, that mid office, back office, risk, governance, analytics, all those things are pretty damned important to what you do. from a front office perspective, but also we are also unraveling some of that world with our engagement with others. And there's a huge need for the people that sit within your ecosystem that you feel are important to understand more about what on earth you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So the understanding works both ways. And I think there is this hunger evolving from perhaps historic frustration where people sit within a system and there are certain critical parts of it that they don't fully understand and perhaps have been a bit shy in saying they don't understand, and have not wanted to be vulnerable in saying, I don't really know. But we're starting to see people actually now say, well, actually, I sit within this trading system. I might be in support for the trading system, but I haven't got a clue what the trader does. And I want to know more about that so I can do my job better. And we're seeing a lot of that turn up in the work we do.
Okay, so if I go back to my trading days and something's come up for me. So I worked in trading rooms for pretty much almost 25 years. I was always surrounded by people, traders, salespeople, analysts, and you would hear coming in, you would hear client orders, you would hear order flow, you would hear noise, you would hear even a level of noise like a hum across the trading floor. And that was a system that I sat within. And that by itself, that system, was a source of information for me, in the fact that noise, that din that I would unconsciously sit within, would suddenly move up as something happened in the market. Something started happening in the market, okay? And it would get your attention and you'd straight away zoom into something on the screen, and then you might, put a position on because you might straight away make a connection. And of course, this is about you as a human making connections with different parts of the system. Or you might hedge something or cover something, or it might get you to read a news story or ask a colleague what's going on. Okay, is there something going on? The system itself is alive. Okay, it exists. When I left trading and I worked from home for a year, and I sat here facing my screens, I didn't hear that noise. It didn't exist anymore. I didn't have any brokers shouting things down boxes. I didn't hear client orders suddenly coming up. I didn't hear other people around the room shouting, screaming something. I found it really hard to connect sometimes as a trader when I was removed from that system. I think if you've never existed in it, it's probably easier. But I know a lot of traders who have left trading environments and gone to trade for themselves and talked about the just being taken out, how much that system that they were part of, or that was around them, or they sat within, they didn't realize it was part of their world. It was part of giving them information, part of giving them intelligence, unconscious intelligence, which is a big part of how you work as a trader.
Yeah, when I was on the life floor, I mean that was just
for the people listening who probably haven't got grey hair yet and have lost most of it. Can you just explain what the life floor was?
Yeah, so the London International Financial Futures Exchange was where futures Europe, I guess, began as an physical open outcry market. So I was there on day one, and for the first 3 years on the floor, then went back for 18 months a bit later on. But we were the market. I mean, we were the bid. We were the trade. We were the thing that turned up on the screen because we were in it. We were feeling it and sensing it. And actually, when I, sort of acquired skills for judging where markets were going, and I had more client oriented skills, I then moved on to the broking desk where, and it felt like, and that was in a trading room. but the trading room felt quiet compared to the floor, So you think trading rooms are busy, but when a trading floor kicks off, there's a different type of busyness, and that was an adjustment for me. And I sort of missed that fact that we were the market. And when you remove, and even though I was on a desk and there was people trading spot this and spot that behind, it wasn't the same experience as actually being on a floor where you felt the force of the market. And so that was a different ecosystem. And that was an ecosystem of banter and observing and characters. And of course, that was something that you had some very different characters on the trading floor that were part of this ecosystem. And characters that became your forced buddies, because some of them, particularly colourful, weren't necessarily the people you choose to be best buddies, but you got to become best buddies with these people because you started to have a level of acceptance and some commonality. And actually that became a very enriched sort of ecosystem for me, and having a system that is enriched when things are difficult, maybe you need to call in a favor or call in support. You need to be really, really connected to that ecosystem that surrounds you to be able to say, I need some help on this. And so really playing and understanding what your ecosystem looks like and having a good relationship with it, the various elements of it, is really, really important, particularly when things get tough. And I know that obviously from the retail point of view, that's really, really important.
This is where it gets interesting because as a trader and as someone sitting there listening to us at the moment, they're always trying to work out where the market's going, where price action's leading us, how the market might respond to a new variable, be it a piece of news, a piece of data, an event, perhaps an unknown event that, it's going to trigger something in the market. When you were in that physical system, because that was a physical system then, now we're in the market now is a virtual system. It's in a way a physical, all the orders go in, but they just go into this kind of electronic aggregating, whereas you were a physical aggregating location. When you were there, and obviously I was connected to it in that I was dealing straight into it rather than being there, you could see where the market was going to go, or you had a sense of where the market was going to go, because you had a sense of which way that system was biased. And when it was too biased one way or too biased the other way, that gave you clues as where to the market was going. So the point I'm trying to make is understanding the system and its complexity and its makeup can be really helpful at trying to understand where it's likely to take price.
Yeah, it's quite a deep thing to be saying that you were picking up there was a personality of the place, and you sensed if a good mood was evolving, and that translated into certain activity, and you sensed also heaviness and difficult conditions and panic. You could smell panic. I mean, you could smell panic, see fear. And when things were going wrong, and you think, shit, this is busy. And then it got busier. And then it got busier beyond that. And then you started to see, real human difficulties struggling with the order flows. And of course, some of that was trading, some of that was paper coming into the market, some of that was someone's own livelihood, disappearing before their eyes. And then the convenience about the system on the floor was that there was a closing bell.
Yeah.
And the closing bell kind of just, I guess, allowed people to reflect to some extent on just what's happened. Some people obviously were stuck in things beyond the closing bell, which became a difficulty. But in a way, you can see why these markets have a closing bell, because you need at some point to stop it, to be able to do a bit of a checks and balances as to, okay, where am I? That's where this ecosystem thinking, also starts to operate, because it's the things that perhaps historically are not important in your ecosystem then become important to the ecosystem when the whole thing needs to be processed and dealt with. And you need to be aware if you suddenly got a problem that you're longer than you thought or shorter than you thought.
So why do you believe that developing a systems thinking mindset or approach is so helpful for traders?
Well, we'll ask the opposite question. What's the downside for not having a system thinking approach to trading? Well, the downside is you're just going to think that you're the best, you're the silo. You don't pay too much attention to the ladder in front of you, the bid and offer, the depth. But actually, if you realise you've got this system around you, then paying attention to those elements, your performance is as a consequence to your relationship with that system. And knowing you got a system in the first place, tuning it and having a relationship with it to be able to do something about it, it is the critical element. Sitting there at your desk and thinking, I'm not part of a system, I'm going to zero on my own, doing my thing. I mean, it's a road to great difficulty, I think. You've got to respect the fact that you are part of something a bit bigger than yourself, sitting in a chair looking at a screen.
Hi, just stepping in briefly to tell you about my book, Mastering the Mental Game of Trading, which was released earlier this year and looks in depth at the complexities of the human aspects of trading, the performance, the process, and what's going on for you as you navigate your way through the markets. The book is doing really well. It's had some great reviews. It's scoring close to 5 stars on Amazon. And I've had many people contact me direct to thank you for writing this book. It is the book that I wish had been written when I started trading almost 4 decades ago. Anyway, do take a chance to have a look at it. It's available on all good book retailing sites, including Amazon, of course. It's available in paperback, on Kindle, Audible, and now it's available in Italian as well. Anyway, now back to the podcast. You are part of it. I mean, you look at the screen, you look at the prices on the screen, and you watch them go up and down. And it's very easy just to forget that those prices just represent the balance of buyers and sellers currently within the system, where they're agreeing to exchange something. And that as more buyers come in, that is the system itself moving. There's a physical thing behind it. All of those behind them have a real order, a real need. Individuals, companies, organizations, countries, producers, suppliers. They're all part of this great big system that is moving price. And you're part of that as well. Your little price going in there may be just you, but if you're acting on the same signal as thousands of others, if you're interpreting that, collectively, you're part of that moving the price. You're part of that system. I always record a time, and I go back many years to a story I heard, and it wasn't an office where I worked, where it was in the early days of electronic trading, where you could literally press the button for a buy order. Okay. And it was a market, and I don't remember which market it was. It might have been a futures market where someone had rested something on their keyboard that was placing buy orders in the market repeatedly. Okay, the button was pressed. And this guy was watching the market, and he's going, there's a lot of buying going through the market to his colleagues. Who's doing this? Not realising that it was him. He put this giant buy order in the market. And he was just continually doing it. And everyone around him was going, God, there's huge buy. And people are getting stopped out around him because of this buy order. that he was putting in unconsciously. Okay. And then someone just, he realized that, damn, this is me. Quickly moved and quickly looked at his position, and he was suddenly logging thousands and thousands of contracts that he wasn't even aware of. And
Yes.
I can't remember what happened to him. He may have lost his job because obviously he had to tell him.
Well, I know of worse stories than that, where someone trading the dummy market, thinking this is fun, this is a great game, but it wasn't a dummy market; it was live.
Oh yes, yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, I was there. But yes, I think the system's interesting. I'd say that I think critical message is really to, and I asked this of a CEO of a shipping company I was coaching once. I said, get yourself a blank piece of paper, stick yourself in the middle, and start to write around yourself what critical parts of the system lie around you that are really important for you to make decisions. And he came back with something, and we talked around. And once we talked around it, this thing was about 10 times bigger than what we started. Starting to realize just how deep the system was that surrounded this particular character, and how important all these elements were for him in terms of him doing his job. And actually, it became the foundation for a business plan, because, of course, you start to think, we need to work on it. I need to build a better dialogue with that particular person. And, and that helped drove him as a successful CEO. And I think we're all our own sort of CEOs of our little businesses, and so it's sort of putting yourself in the middle and actually spending time thinking, okay, what bits of my relationship with all the bits that are important for me to drive my decision making in markets, what those things look like, and what shape are they in, and do I need to pay attention to any of them? And that's the starting point. And I think you asked the question about, why should they even be bothered to do it? Well, because it makes sense. It's common sense, right? It's common sense to pay attention to the bits and pieces that drive you to make appropriate and correct and well-informed decisions at the right speed, and at the right pace to be able to interact with the market. And if you don't do that, then you might be missing an awful lot of opportunity. You might be a bit too slow. You might be not as creative and well-informed as you perhaps think you should be, because you're not using the system to your advantage. And I think it's play the system. Understand what your system looks like, and make sure it's as well informed in terms of how it is engaging with you to drive a lot of these really big decisions about trading.
It's really about learning the game you're playing and understanding it more. It's understanding that, I say, you yourself are a system or part of a system. We all are, okay? And we're connected to lots of other systems. And we're actually trying to play a system. That's what trading is. The system out there is the market. And as traders, unless you work in the physical market, for example, someone who might be the oil market who works for a production company that then has to sell their production and hedge it and what have you. Unless you're part of that, you're actually on the outside of the system trying to play it, trying to guess it. Now, at the very beginning of this talk, at the introduction, I talked about the beer game, which we both read about in Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline. Okay, so I explained at the beginning, if you're still listening, that it's a simulation exercise, which they developed at MIT, which demonstrates the complexity of a supply chain system. Okay. Now, when I listened to that, Mark, and I don't know if you got the same. Okay, when I read it in the book, I actually listened to the book and then read it. I found that so brilliantly captures what happens out there in the market. And particularly we can go back to what happened in the gas market when Russia invaded Ukraine as a great example of how the price just exploded up. But it was already exploding 6 months before Russia went into Ukraine. So there was kind of an it started well before that event happened. So people must have been anticipating an imbalance in that system without realizing that they were actually creating the early distortion even before it occurred.
Yeah, I think they were better tuned into the critical elements of their system to pick up these signals of actually asking, what does that mean? What could that mean? What might it mean? And actually positioning for it. I think it's probably easier if you're trading in the commodities world to actually perhaps ask the questions about what this system looks like. Perhaps easier than if you're trading in the financial world. Although the financial world, you've got the Fed and the Bank of England. But I think the idea of supply chains and origins and, what the system looks like in commodity is actually something I found when I ventured in the commodity world. It was much easier to see what that system looked like, and the complexity of it and the supply chain and the critical players and how we obviously supplemented the workings of it as a commodity broker using exchanges, to trade commodity products. It was a bit more tangible than, I've lived in the interest world and the foreign exchange world and the fixed income world, the equity world. Actually, it's much easier to understand the system when you ventured into the commodity world because it was a bit more side of real. You could see the product on the shelf. You could see the structures much more clearly in front of your eyes. So, I think that does have an advantage.
Yeah, but you can see the feedback loops, which then create that demand, which then pushes the price higher, and then people go, "Why is it?" Again, it's that goes back to that almost that button, that finger on the button. Why is the price going higher? There's a lot of buying, and you are part of that system. That's the whole thing. Oh, it's going up. I think it's going higher. I better buy more. Just stepping in here for a second to tell you about the Society of Technical Analysts' brilliant home study course. We are strong advocates for anything that can help you improve yourself as a trader. Understanding and learning more about technical analysis is one of those things if that's the direction that you've gone in. Now, the home study course has been put together by some of the world's best technical analysts, and we are delighted to promote that course on their behalf. And listeners of the AlphaMind podcast can obtain a small discount on the cost of the course by using a code which they provided for our listeners. Do go to our website, alpha-mind.net, where you can find out more about this offer. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so I think that world has an advantage of being able to see a bigger picture and recognise those elements that are important within their system to be paying attention to inform their view. And perhaps it's a lesson for people out there that are trading product. You don't have to carry on trading the same product forever. You may want to switch products and think, well, what product can I switch into where I perhaps get a better sense as to what information's out there to inform my view and for me to get the best trading opportunity possible out of my effort and time in the market. It might be that you just plugged into the wrong product.
We're going to finish in a minute, but before we do, it's this bit about when your ego meets the system, how that corrupts your ego, and then how that then corrupts yourself as a trader. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think certainly under stress, your ego is a bigger problem than it is normally. So if you're a stressed ego, then you can have some significant problems about even seeing the system beyond the end of your nose. I think I know people talk about ego as being a bit of a problem, but to be honest, if we had no ego, I'm pretty sure that civilization wouldn't be where it is today, because everyone would just be hanging around like a Sunday afternoon and nobody would make a decision. And every now and then you need someone to come along to wake you up to get you motivated, and that needs someone with a bit of an ego, to be quite frank. So I wouldn't sort of paint egos as being hugely destructive, although they can be. But every now and then you do need a bit of a wake-up call. As you know, and I know, that sometimes the system needs to get rid of an ego if it's negatively influencing the system. And we have seen that in our lives in the trading world, that you might have someone that's massively profitable, but the ego becomes a problem to a system. The system can't afford that ego to hang around because it's starting to compromise the system. And I think that, they need to be well managed. There is an opportunity with them, but they need to be very well managed.
Yeah, an ego can't take on a system and hope to win, because it's. I think that sometimes is what we forget, though. Where we think we see our ego as central to the system, when actually it's not. It's just a part of it. If we try and go out there and put our ego in front of the system, it's going to get steamrolled.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. About, if you can guess, I think stepping back every now and then and recognizing that it's not just about you, and there's a bit more about you than just you, and recognizing that, that's the starting point. I think every now and then, if you do have an ego attitude, and of course we all bounce in and out of it ourselves, but every now and then just step back and think, just look at the bigger picture for a moment, because it might be very, very useful for me to look at the bigger picture and see those components, identify them, do something about them if I can to optimize them. Okay, maybe then go back to being an ego, but don't forget to do the system bit.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I'm conscious of the time, and I think we've got to bring this to an end. This is a huge topic which we've just scratched the surface on, that I don't think gets talked enough about in this, business.
Not. We know it. We know it absolutely isn't. And we aren't finding with some very, very big clients that they are shifting conversation towards the system beyond the individual. And they're using us to do some wonderful things with their people to align to that. So, and I think it is, you don't hear about it much out there. We follow a lot of what people in our world do, and it's all about this and the money, and if it's about the money individual, then they're missing a huge amount of stuff, particularly if it's if you're looking at a bunch of individuals independently and it's just about the money they make, and you're not paying attention to the system they sit within, there's a hell of a lot of opportunity you're missing. And the state of your system is very fragile if that's the state of your system. And it can't take a shock easily.
100%. Well, listen, I think we've got to come back to this in a future one. We've just introduced this, hopefully, to our audience who are probably still confused about what it is. So we will return to what we think is a really important subject. But great for us to have at least started the conversation, I think, today, Mark.
Yeah, we had to start somewhere. I think we're just reflecting about where we're seeing the conversation in the bigger picture trading world moving. And our clients are pushing us into these types of conversations.
Thank you for listening today. We do hope you enjoyed this rather different subject, and hopefully that stirs some thinking for you. Again, thank you to our podcast partner, the Society of Technical Analysts. Do check out the offer with regard to their brilliant home study course. If you are interested in understanding more about yourself as a trader, do check out my new book, Mastering the Mental Game of Trading. In the meantime, we wish you the very best of luck, and look forward to you joining future episodes of the AlphaMind Podcast. Goodbye.